Good day, everybody, and I hope you're enjoying your somewhat warm Thursday. It's cloudy, but it's definitely warmer than it should be, and enjoy it for a while. I think it's going to be warm tomorrow, and then it's going to start cooling off somewhat next week, but we should expect this. It's still wintertime, and we're right in the middle of February, so you know there's going to be some cold weather coming. However, let's shift over and talk about Matthew, though. I want to talk about Matthew 9:18 through 38 today. So if you want to take a few moments, go ahead and pause the video and read that portion of text, Matthew 9:18 through 38. All right, I'll assume that you've read the text, so let's start discussing this text, the latter part of chapter 9. There's a few things going on here, a few episodes, so let's break it up into about three different sections. The first section I want to look at is 9:18 through 26. 9:18 through 26. So, Jesus has been doing his ministry. Now remember, chapters 8 and 9 of Matthew are concentrated with miracle stories. There will be more miracles within the Gospel of Matthew. In fact, we still have the feeding of the 5,000 to come. We still have Jesus walking on water, which is a very interesting episode in the Gospel of Matthew. We have a couple other healings, or a healing and an exorcism of a demon. But there are more miracles in the Gospel of Matthew, but chapters 8 and 9 is the area where this miraculous work is concentrated. And it precedes chapter 10, where Jesus is going to hand off this authority, or give this authority to his disciples to be able to do all the things that he has done. All right, now, chapter 9:18 through 26. Now, what's interesting about this section right here, this miracle story, is we have two miracle stories within this one episode. You kind of have a miracle story within another miracle story. So the way it works is that there's someone who comes to Jesus and asks for him to come and heal, and Jesus is willing to go, and he starts to go, and then someone else comes up behind him, and Jesus is unaware of the person, and touches his cloak. And so there's a miracle within a miracle going on here. So it's rather interesting. The first part, though, is about a ruler who came and asked Jesus for help. Now, who is the ruler? I wish there was a better description. I wish there was more information. Most likely, it is a synagogue ruler. However, there's no reason for it not to be some kind of a governmental leader. Like the centurion before who came to Jesus and asked for help. Maybe it's a foreigner that's heard about Jesus and is coming to help, which in Galilee would not be that uncommon. There were a lot more. The Roman garrison was not far from Galilee. Let's put it that way, the main Roman garrison for this area. But most likely, and I think I would agree that this is probably talking about a synagogue ruler, which makes it kind of interesting because we have a Jewish religious leader here who is coming to Jesus for help. Instead of what we've encountered before is that Jewish leaders are kind of they're reluctant to accept Jesus. They're quick to accuse him of things. They seem to be very antagonistic towards him, and at times it seems that they try to set up traps for him and things like that. So, but here we have no kind of mischievous behavior. Just a simple person, I think it's a synagogue ruler, is coming to Jesus. Now, the ruler itself is the ruler. I don't even like the term ruler. It's really not a ruler. It's more of a manager or something like that. In Jewish communities, you had to have 10 males. Now, we know this from later on in Jewish studies. And I would imagine it's still relevant, even though it comes prior, because these kind of customs are slow to change. So I imagine this custom was already practiced in the time of Jesus also. If you had 10 males in a community, you could start a synagogue. Well, it was kind of like, it's not church, but it's kind of like church for what we experience, is that people would give money to support that synagogue. And if you had a large enough gathering of people, I guess you could probably have someone who you employed. So this ruler is more likely just an employee, the person who does the main keeps the worship service or whatever they do, their type of service, moving along in a steady manner. It's probably more kind of like a preacher in a church today. But regardless, here's the key. We don't know if this person is of the Pharisaic tradition or the Sadducean tradition. So we have no idea there. Probably more Pharisaic because they're in Galilee. But we'd have there's no mention of any kind of unpleasant attitude or thoughts or malevolence towards Jesus from this person. He just comes because he has a problem with his daughter. So he wants Jesus to come and heal his daughter. She's sick with something. So she's not died yet, but later on she will be considered to be dead. Now, why Jesus doesn't do like he does with the centurion, I don't know. I remember the Roman centurion came to him and told him that I know you have authority just to speak, and my servant will be healed, and that would have been from a distance. Jesus didn't have to go. Why he doesn't do that here, I don't know. Maybe it was for testimony for this synagogue person's family, maybe for the community, so forth and so on. Regardless, he's willing to go, and he starts on his way, and there's a woman who is suffering from some kind of she's hemorrhaging. And it's been going on for quite a long time. This would make this woman unclean. So in her mind, she's thinking like, there's no reason why Jesus would even want to help me because I'm an unclean individual. She feels unworthy and therefore shamed and unable to approach Jesus. So she kind of sneaks up on him. This is what it is. It's almost like she's stalking him, trying to hide and to reach out to touch him. But she has such a trust in the power that Jesus wields that if she just touches his cloak, touches somewhere, that she'll receive some kind of a resolution to her problem. So this is a horrible situation for this woman. She would have been an outcast in society. They were not... she would have been considered unclean, which would have been horrible for her situation in society. But anyway, she comes to Jesus and she touches his garment. Now, Jesus doesn't know what's going on, but he marvels at this person's faith and then tells her that she's going to be all right because of her belief in him. And then he goes on and starts back with the original miracle, going to this person's house. So he gets in the house and you have these people, they're mourning. Now, let me explain a little bit more here. If a person had money, because it talks about flute players and things going on here, they could hire professional mourners. So the way a person was lamented in their death had some kind of significance in their importance in whatever. If you had money, then you could hire these professional mourners to come in and play the role of mourners and elevate the status of that dead person in a sense. But Jesus sends them away, tells them the girl's not dead, and then he raises her, heals her. It's either a resurrection or a healing, but one or the other. There's a miracle worked here, and she arises, and then after that, reports about Jesus spread again. So we've had this broadcasting of the ministry of Jesus going on throughout the Gospel of Matthew. So when Jesus does amazing things, word goes out, and people find out about it, and it brings more people to Jesus itself. Now, one thing about this situation with the woman who had been hemorrhaging for 12 years, Jesus never turned away anyone. Never turned away anyone. And we are not going to see Jesus become harsh. He does become harsh in chapter 23 of the Gospel of Matthew. But it only comes after he has the religious leaders have devised strategies. They're working towards a plan to destroy him. He knows that they have ill intent toward him, and so he becomes defensive. And he's been trying to convince them of his status, of his ministerial relevance, so forth and so on, but they just have not accepted him. But that's not until late in the Gospel of Matthew. Up until that point, Jesus is always accepting of anyone. He never turns anyone away. Even people who society would consider unworthy, like this hemorrhaging woman. He never turned her away. He didn't scold her for touching him. Remember, she's unclean. So if she touches him, that makes him unclean. He did not scold her and say, "Woman, what are you doing? You've made me unclean." No, he commends her faith. And she's healed. It's quite interesting how he handles this, and how I think Christians today could learn a lesson about someone like this also. How they should handle these people who society considers to be marginal, outcasts, whatever. Then you go on, 9:27 through 31. We have two blind men here. What's interesting about this is they're calling out to Jesus, and they're calling him Son of David. Now, at the very beginning of the Gospel of Matthew, Joseph is called the Son of David, and the importance of the child is told to Mary as it coming from the Davidic line. But we haven't had any more mention of Jesus and the Davidic connection until now. So it's kind of interesting. Now, Son of David obviously has a messianic ring to it for the Jewish people. They were looking for someone to come from the line of David. Now, this is going to become important in chapter 22 of the Gospel of Matthew, when Jesus talks about this Son of David title and how it's not appropriate for him. And he uses Psalm 110 to make the point, whereas he says, if David is calling this person, the Messiah, the Lord, then the Messiah cannot be under, as far as like authority, or from the lineage, I guess, of David, because the Messiah is Lord. And so David recognizes his authority, so he can't be the Son, he has to be something greater than that. And so we'll get into this more in chapter 22, and how Jesus uses Psalm 110 is quite interesting. Anyway, Jesus heals these guys, and again, he commends their faith, and he tells them, though, not to tell anyone. He tells them, don't tell anyone. But then we find out the report goes out anyway, and his popularity continues to spread out through the district. Now, have you ever thought about this? This is a good point about narrative writing. The fact that Jesus told these two blind men that are healed to not tell anyone, and they do it, means they disobeyed Jesus. Did they sin? I guess strictly speaking, yes. However, the narrator never says that they did anything wrong. Not at all. In fact, there's only a positive reaction that comes from their report that was not supposed to go out. Fame about Jesus and popularity spreads again. So in narrative writings, you'll see people do things that make you scratch your head and think like, that's not really appropriate activity. If the narrator doesn't say anything about it, like in a gospel, just understand it as part of the story, and as the story moves on, how it helps or detracts the story in its progression. We go on again, 32 through 34. This is a miracle that where a person has become mute because of demonic activity. So he's a demon-possessed person who has made this person mute. As soon as the demon's cast out, the guy can speak again. And people marvel at what Jesus is able to do. However, there is a contrast here. Now remember, before that it was always about his popularity, his fame is being spread. As his ministry is successful, reports go out, and people are amazed, and they marvel, and they're drawn to Jesus. Except here, in verse 34, we find out that the Pharisees are already trying to accuse Jesus of doing things in an inappropriate manner, accusing him of casting out demons by the prince of demons. Now, Jesus is going to deal with this more in chapter 12, because it's coming back again. He doesn't address it here. But notice that we have this antagonistic effort coming from the Pharisees toward Jesus. They're going to try to thwart him. They're going to try to demean him. shame him, whatever they can do to lessen his popularity, to lessen his fame among the people, they're going to. Now, the reason why the Pharisees are doing this, we don't know for sure. I wish the narrator would give us some more information. However, we can see through the Gospel of Matthew, and we can see as it continues on, that the Pharisees did not like what Jesus was doing many times just because he was popular. The Pharisees also wanted to be popular. There weren't that many Pharisees out there. It seems like when you read the Gospels, they're everywhere, but that's not true. There weren't that many. I think there's been an estimation of in Jesus' time there were about 5,000 Pharisees, devout Pharisees. But anyway, they are becoming very negative towards Jesus, and it's going to become even worse, leading to plans to destroy him. But anyway, we have this first instance where we see some negativity, or it's about this. This is the second instance where we see negativity towards Jesus from this group. Then you have 35 through 38, and so Jesus, in fact, 9:35 is exactly the same as 4:23. It's quite interesting. If you look at Matthew 4:23 and then look at Matthew 9:35, they're almost exactly the same. There's a couple words difference, but that's it. They're very, very similar. Seems to be providing some kind of a bookend. And we're getting ready to go into another teaching discourse, or the mission discourse in chapter 10. So this would be a fitting closing. But anyway, we have this a call for the people to go out and do things, his disciples to go out and do things. Jesus has been doing it. Now he's going to give this authority to his disciples. Now, here's a couple things that I find very interesting about Jesus. So in verse 36, Matthew wants us to know he had compassion for the people. So he has this compassion, whereas they've not seen this compassion from other religious leaders. In fact, it seems like the Pharisees are more interested in condemning and belittling people, so forth and so on, I guess in order to elevate their prestige. But they don't have compassion on people, yet Jesus has compassion upon people. So all Christians, when we think about doing Christian ministry, it has to start from compassion. You have to have compassion for people. And he tells why. He goes on, he says, because they are harassed and helpless. Well, how's that? Where's that coming from? Well, he says, because they don't have a very good shepherd. And so the religious leaders of that time were considered shepherds. You can see this kind of imagery coming out of the Old Testament. Especially, you ought to read Ezekiel 34. It's quite interesting. Jesus is very angry. God is very angry with the religious leaders of the time in the Old Testament. This would be around the time of 585, 590 BCE, right before the people go into exile. And he says, because you've not been good shepherds to my people, I am going to become a shepherd for my people. And this is exactly what Jesus talks about in John chapter 10. It seems to be an explanation for a change that's coming in the new covenant when Jesus takes over as being the shepherd. However, he notices the people are without a shepherd and he wants to help them. Now, 37, it's a call to mission. And so he's going to send out his disciples. He's hoping that they will make more disciples. And so this is really the beginning of like we consider like the commission in a sense. We always talk about the end of the Gospel of Matthew 28, but we have this right here also where he sends out his disciples to make more disciples and to that there's a great mission out there to be had. And then in chapter 10, we're going to start in the mission discourse. And so this is very, very fitting, a fitting ending for what is getting ready to come about. All right, I'm going to stop right there. And then next week, I will not be doing anything. I'll be doing coming back in 2 weeks. So I won't have anything next Thursday, but expect starting on Matthew 10 in 2 weeks. All right, have a great day, and I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you on Sunday. Bye.